9th, and the class is taught by Dave Laycock, Sergeant Major, so we're pretty serious about this class. And I did ask for a special announcement for a stewardship reflection, and I'd like to invite Paul Lumley to please come forward to share his words with us today. Thank you, Paul.
Good morning. My family and I have been members of this church for 25 years. And as I wrote those words, I just had to do a double take to make sure that was correct, because it just doesn't seem like it's been that many years. As some of you may know, my father was a Presbyterian minister. First in Detroit, both at Westminster Church and then later at Monteith Presbyterian Church. So I always knew what church I would be attending. When he retired from Monteith and the church was transferred to a Baptist congregation, we went looking for another church to attend. Our kids were 2 and 4 years old at that time, and it was important to us to find a good youth program to help them develop their faith and to try to keep them on the right track. As adults, we wanted an inspiring minister and a welcoming and warm congregation. And we found all of those things here at Rosedale. So my family, as well as my brother Dave and his wife Janice and their family, all joined Rosedale. The head pastor of Rosedale at that time was Reverend Rick Peters. And I didn't know it at that time, but he was a good friend with my father. They would go out to lunch every week, share stories, tell their dumb jokes. But at that time, I wasn't aware of that connection. And then later, my father was an interim minister at Allen Park Presbyterian when Kelly was the associate pastor there. So he got to know her very well, too. So there was a strong connection between our family and Rosedale that we weren't aware of, but something was calling us to be here. Our children started here in kindergarten with, of course, Mr. Guy and Mrs. Fife, and in the cherub choir with Carol Johnson, and then progressed through many different Sunday school teachers and youth advisors and choir directors, and ended up in the very capable hands of Kathy Marzoff in the high school youth groups. One day when our son Alex was very young, he came up to us and hugged us and says, "Daddy, Mommy, thank you for church." So we felt like we did something right. One of the highlights of me being here at Rosedale was that when our children and I went on a youth group mission trip to Mexico. There were 45 students and six adults that went on that trip. My wife Alicia was asked to provide Spanish translations and medical support, which fortunately we didn't need much of. Just a few cuts and bruises, some sunburns, and some cement burns from the heavy cement work we were doing down there, putting on a ceiling on a third-floor story of a school that we were building down there. It was hard work in the hot sun, but it was a great time, and some of the better activities actually occurred after the hard day's work, when the children would get together and play soccer with some of the local kids. And that became kind of an every night affair, but that by the end of the week, it seemed like half the town was there watching and encouraging everyone on. Our daughter Tiffany ended up going to Hope College, which is a Christian college in Holland, Michigan, on the west side of the state. And after graduation, she moved to Seattle to have 1 year of mission work over there, working with high school kids. At the end of that year, she and some other adults took their high school kids on a 3-week trip to Guatemala for their mission trip. And then she continued on and got a master's degree at another Christian college, Seattle Pacific University. She's very active in her church as a greeter and kind of the social coordinator, and has found a very good home there. So your love, your attention, your education has really given her a good basis for her life. Some of my best experiences here have been singing with Lowell Everson and the men's choir. I always enjoy that annual affair. And also serving as an elder on the technology committee. I was asked many times, both at my father's churches and here, but it just didn't seem like the right time when I was trying to put my focus on raising the kids. But a good friend of mine, Dave Culler, passed away, and I was asked to fill his term, and that just felt like the right calling and the right time to join as an elder, and I even signed up for a second term. So that's a little bit about how we got to Rosedale and some of the activities we've been involved with. But this is actually supposed to be a stewardship speech. So I thought I'd say a few words about tithing and relate it back to some of the activities in my family. In particular about my father, because he was obviously a very big believer in the biblical teachings of tithing. He tithed all his life, even in retirement. In fact, my very first job was as a paper boy delivering the Detroit News, and he insisted I was putting 10% of my money away to give to the church, which was all of about 42 cents a week, I think. Now, 10% can be a significant contribution for many people, and especially for my father on a minister's salary, which isn't all that much. But it was important for him to do. So it was interesting that in 2008, when the stock market took a crash, his retirement portfolio really didn't do too badly. It was even more interesting that his financial advisors were my brother Dave and I, and we took a big hit. So maybe he was doing something right. When our parents passed away a few years ago, their instructions were that 10% of their estate was to go to certain organizations, a tithe. One of their organizations they wanted to contribute to was their Presbyterian church up north in Tawas City, which is where they would attend when they went to summers up to their family cottage, and they would go there for their church services, and they were very active up in that church. So in trying to figure out what their estate was worth, we figured out all the various pieces, but we didn't quite know the value of this family cottage. We wanted to keep it in the family and not sell it. So that took us a few months to figure out. So one Saturday evening, we're sitting around the table, the four brothers, there's two of us and two other ones, sitting around the family table up at the cottage, looking at all the tax and real estate information, and we all came to an agreement on what the numbers should be. Added it all up, and then we took the tithe and said, this is the contributions my parents want to make. And then from that, we wrote out the amount that they wanted to give to the Tawas Presbyterian Church. So the next morning, went to the service with the intent to meet with the preacher after the service and present this to him on behalf of our parents. And during the service, one of the elders got up and gave a speech about their capital campaign. They needed to fix the roof. Can you imagine that? And he said they had a very successful campaign, but they were just a little bit short. They needed another $7,000. And we looked down at the check that we had just written, and the amount was exactly $7,000. So our brother Mark got up and went to the front of the church and told this story to them. And by the time he was finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Some people say that Christians just have more coincidences than others. But at times, I think we help create our own coincidences. Reading the letter we received recently about Kelly and her background reminded me of the challenges and sacrifices that ministers have to have. in order to perform this good work they do. While most of us work 8 to 5, Monday to Friday, they do that, but then they also work weekends and nights to be with us when we're available for church activities. And while Sunday is often our best day of relaxation and rest, it's their busiest day. To become a minister, they have to have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in divinity, and then often they have additional master's degrees and additional training to provide us the love and the caring and the support that we need to be in this congregation. They lead a large organization. They have professional speaking skills. They provide marriage counseling and grief counseling, and they provide life advice for a variety of emotional and even medical support. These are skills that are very valued in the outside business world. And we're fortunate that we have people like that that are willing to give of themselves for the service of the Lord and to our benefit. As we close this stewardship season, 2 weeks from today, on November 6th, the congregation is invited to come to a celebration brunch in the fellowship hall. There'll be 2 seatings, and the congregation can attend either one. The first seating is at 9:45 and the second at 11:30 following the worship service. This fully catered, free meal is a way to say thank you to the congregation from the Stewardship Committee.